talking about Dad's personality, there was another time that I remember very vividly sitting in the car with him. Dad had a really special relationship with all of his brothers and sisters. Maybe it was the hardships that they went through as children, but he was very close to them. I remember after we moved to California, I don't know how many people know very much about Uncle Carl. Uncle Carl was another really unique personality. He was very suave and always a wonderful dresser and always said the right thing and said things to make everybody feel good around him. Wonderful dancer. Loved the ladies, but he was just as wonderful to the guys as he was to the women. He was just a really strange personality, but he was... I remember reading in the National Enquirer once about this rags to riches thing. They featured Uncle Carl in there as a millionaire. And Darlene called me and says, "Did you read the National Enquirer? Uncle Carl's in the National Enquirer. They say he's a millionaire. I wonder if he's told Ethel about it." And they talked about his home in Piedmont, and they said that he lived in this 11-room mansion of some sort. And Darlene and I got on the phone, and we kept counting all the rooms we could think of, and we couldn't come up to 11. And we laughed over that article. But one thing about Carl is he was extremely frugal. He wouldn't pay retail for anything. In fact, he dressed very, not flamboyantly, very richly. But he never paid hardly anything for his clothes, because he always went to the pawn shops in San Francisco. And he frequented the pawn shops that were rich guys that needed to get money, that fell on hard times. They would pawn their stuff, their jewelry and these wonderful suits, and that's where he did his shopping. And this one day we had gone to, Dad and Carl needed some new suits, and he and Dad were going to go to San Francisco, and I begged, says, "Can I go with you? Can I go with you?" "Oh yeah, go ahead." Now I must have been around, 17 at the time. And we got over, I think it was on 3rd Street, if I remember correctly, which is now Skid Row in San Francisco. I think it was probably Skid Row back then too. But Carl went into the pawn shop, and Dad and I sat out in the car. And we were just visiting, and Dad started just... I was noticing all the strange people on the street, because they were really boyish looking. Really some really scuzzy looking characters, I thought. And I commented about it, and Dad says, "Oh, well, look at that one." And he would point out different people, and he'd point out something about them that was positive. He'd say, yeah, he might need a bath, yeah, but look at those eyes. See how beautiful those eyes? That one has really, really nice eyelashes. And he kept all these people. Pretty soon, I'm looking at these people, and I'm trying to find what Dad is looking at. And he made a comment. He says, "You know, Carma, I like to study people." He says, "And you know, I have, in all my life, I have only met one person that I can truly say was really ugly." He says, "If you look at people, there's always something about them that is a redeeming feature. Nobody is totally ugly. And it's up to us to find what it is about people that is nice looking." And you know, when I think of Dad, people liked him. He made you feel good around him. Uh, the way he greeted people was just differently. I can remember several times walking into church with somebody, and he always was respectful. He always used titles, but he'd use first names. Like, if it wasn't Aunt Rose or Aunt something or other, or Glennis Packham was Sister Glennis, he always had a respectful title. Yeah, he did use familiar terms with him, but he would walk into church, and I can remember him, Wilma Hill, I remember him coming up to her once and taking her hand and looking at her straight in the eyes and says, "I hope you feel as good as you look today," instead of just hello. It was never just hello, how are you? It was always some comment. He'd come out behind somebody and say, "Oh, looks like you need to come visit me. You need your hair trimmed." Or, you know, just something that was a little bit, made you realize that when he looked at you, he really saw you. And he was really happy to see you. And if he said, "How are you?" he really meant it. It wasn't just a polite phrase. And he did that by never just saying, "How are you?" Another time I remember very vividly, walking at the old Concord Chapel. Mom was there, but Darlene and I were going in with him. He had Darlene on one arm and me on the other. Very gentlemanly. He always offered his arm like a true gentleman, and we were strutting across the things, and I remember him looking sort of puffed up a little, and he says, "I'm walking into church with the two most beautiful girls here." Always made you feel good.